Fad Treatments: Exploring the Efficacy of Fad Treatments Within the Autism Population by Haddad. Research has shown that as the number of incidences of children diagnosed with autism continues to increase, so does the number of interventions that lack scientific evidence. Fad treatments are prevalent among the autism population because of the nature of the disorder. Autism affects all aspects of development and can have a profound impact on family functioning. Parents are willing to try anything out of desperation to help their child. It is important for professionals and caregivers to understand that autism interventions should be empirically supported. Those that lack merit can often do more harm than good. There have been several court cases related to fad treatments within the autism population. On August 23, 2005, a 5-year-old boy with autism died after receiving his third round of chelation therapy. His family sued the doctor that administered the treatment, claiming that they knew chelation therapy was not ineffective in treating autism symptoms, and it was not FDA approved. Chelation therapy is only approved for treating lead poisoning according to FDA regulations. Unfortunately, all criminal charges were dropped against the doctor that treated this child with chelation therapy. Another court case involved a father in Chicago who filed a lawsuit against Illinois and Florida doctors who administered chelation therapy to his 7-year-old son. The lawsuit alleges that the doctors caused harm to the child by providing dangerous and unnecessary experimental treatments. The father claimed that his child did not have heavy metal poisoning and had not been exposed to lead. There have also been lawsuits pertaining to facilitated communication. A Michigan father was accused of sexually molesting his severely autistic daughter after messages were typed using facilitated communication. The criminal case was dropped against the father after the child was not able to answer specific questions without her facilitator. The family filed lawsuits against the school as well as law enforcement. These cases are prime examples of why caregivers need to be very cautious when choosing treatments that are not evidence-based. The unfortunate part about the cases discussed is that both chelation and facilitated communication are still used today as alternative autism intervention options. When discussing fad or controversial treatments, it is important to begin by defining the term fad treatment and also examining what it entails. According to Zane, fad treatments are interventions that use scientific jargon, sound logic, or are supported by celebrities and are discussed in the media and on the internet, where many parents can be exposed to them. Fad treatments, by definition, have no substantial body of research showing that they are effective in treating any aspect of autism. Thus, there is little confidence that they are effective in treating any aspect of autism. Over 45% of treatments used within the autism population have little or no research supporting their safety or efficacy. Fad treatments can be dangerous, and they are often a waste of money, and they create false hope among caregivers. There are 5 factors that make an intervention controversial. These include cure claims, practitioner specialization, questionable research, intensity, and legal action. Cure claims are interventions that assert that they can cure disabilities that realistically can't be cured. Practitioner specialization is the intervention that requires professionals to become more advanced or specialized. A prime example would be occupational therapists who are now experts in sensory integration, or physical therapists who are specialized in craniosacral therapy. Questionable research refers to treatments that have had limited or no scientific studies completed. Intensity is when interventions are recommended at a high frequency rate. For example, therapy is needed to occur like 40 hours per week. In regard to legal action, as soon as the merits of a practice are debated in court, it becomes controversial. There are several fad treatments used within the autism population. In 2006, an internet survey was conducted that examined various treatments used by parents who had children with autism. The survey identified 111 treatments that were tried by parents. The study categorized the treatments into the following categories: medication, vitamin supplements, special diets, medical procedures, education and therapy approaches, and alternative therapy/medicine combined programs. Biomedical treatment approaches are controversial practices used within the autism population. Biomedical interventions include things such as chelation therapies, creatine injections, melatonin, gluten-free, casein-free diets, and vitamin therapy. Numerous research studies have been done that examine the efficacy of several biomedical treatments for the autism spectrum disorder. Most, if not all, of the studies conclude that biomedical interventions are not effective treatments for autism symptoms. One of the most controversial biomedical interventions is chelation therapy. Proponents suggest that children with autism have a higher than normal buildup of heavy metals in their bodies, particularly mercury. Chelation therapy supposedly removes these heavy metals from the body, thus resulting in a decrease of autism symptoms. Research indicates that there is no evidence that chelation therapy is a cure for autism, and the FDA cautions against its use. Another example of a common fad biomedical intervention used among children with autism is creatine injections. Creatine is a hormone that controls digestion. It has been suggested that secretin injections may reduce some of the symptoms of autism. An increase of an interest in using secretin as a treatment occurred after a child with the disorder was given an injection of secretin, and parents reported drastic improvements in his language and behavior. A 1999 study examined this claim by conducting a double-blind, placebo-controlled experiment in which children with autism or PDD were given a single dose of secretin. Research indicated that those children who received the secretin injections had no significant improvements in any areas that were measured. The study concluded that the injections were not an effective intervention for children on the autism spectrum. There's something interesting to note here, that despite the results of the study, 69% of the parents in the study continued to show interest in using secretin as a treatment option. The gluten-free, casein-free diet is yet another example of a biomedical treatment used widely by families with children that have autism. The gluten-free, casein-free diet is the most commonly used non-evidence-based treatment option for symptoms of autism. Proponents of the diet suggest that when children with a disorder eat a diet free of proteins, gluten, and casein, their behavior improves. Hurwitz reviewed studies on the gluten-free, casein-free diet that occurred between 1999 and 2012. The author identified several reasons why the diet was chosen as an intervention. These included the fact that the diet was easily accessed, and that means that families could do this on their own without consulting doctors or specialists, and the guidelines of the diet were fairly clear-cut. The author also discussed the challenges of the diet, and these challenges included vigilant meal planning and food preparation. This required a huge financial commitment from the families. The diet may have negative social consequences, and caregivers must ensure that the nutritional needs of the child are being met. After reviewing the literature, the author concluded that there had been limited scientific studies done on the gluten-free, casein-free diets. Those that had been conducted did not support the use of the diet as a valid and effective treatment option for children on the autism spectrum. Another controversial intervention used to decrease the symptoms of autism is facilitated communication. Facilitated communication is a technique used to help individuals who cannot speak communicate by using a keyboard. When the intervention was first introduced, it promised so much for so little. In 2001, facilitated communication was discredited as a valid treatment option for impaired or non-communicative adults, specifically those that had autism. It has been suggested that the typed messages were actually created by the facilitator, either knowingly or unknowingly. Facilitated communication is one of the best examples of how practice can become absolutely disassociated from empirical research. So why are fad treatments so popular within the autism population? One reason is that parents are easily influenced to try fad interventions because of the nature of the disorder. Parents of young children with autism are prone to fad interventions because caregivers lack knowledge about the disorder in general, and they also know little about what is considered to be evidence-based practice. Also, very few professionals are well versed on the disorder and the treatment options, and this can also influence parents' decisions to use bad treatments. Berquist and Charlap conducted a study examining how parents evaluated autism interventions. Their findings suggested that children enrolled in non-empirically supported interventions was reported to be between 74 and 92%. They also discussed the downside of parents using non-validated interventions to treat their children. Some of these include lost time, lack of improvement, financial loss, harmful side effects, and emotional letdown. It is important to remember when working with families to present the most current research that is valid and scientifically supported to help them make an educated decision about treatment options for their child. In the field of applied behavior analysis, many practitioners will work with children on the autism spectrum. According to ethical guidelines previously mentioned, behavior analysts should always use interventions that are empirically supported. In 2008, Schreck and Mazur conducted a study that examined board-certified behavior analysts' use and attitudes about autism interventions. They surveyed several BCBAs to determine what types of interventions were being used and their beliefs in regards to various treatment options for individuals with autism. They found that the vast majority of BCBAs were using ABA, however, a small percentage was not. The researchers indicated that those BCBAs that were engaging in non-scientific interventions were doing so because of the cost effectiveness and because the implementation of the treatments were easy. BCBA attitudes reflected on the survey indicate that although they did not see fad treatments as effective in changing behavior, they continue to do so because of the reasons just mentioned. It is important to note that ABA is one of the only treatments for autism that has significant scientific support in terms of its efficacy. Schreck and Miller in 2010 discussed numerous ways for behavior analysts to conduct themselves ethically when they are constantly bombarded by fad treatments. The authors state that it is the behavior analyst's responsibility to promote scientifically based treatments for autism. There are several ways to do so, and these include remaining aware of scientific knowledge concerning treatment, choosing treatments based on scientific evidence, recommending scientifically supportive and most effective treatment procedures, appraising likely effects of all alternative treatments, describing specific objectives of the treatment, and upholding and advancing behavior analysts to society while still cooperating in reducing conflicts with other professionals. Behavior analysts are oftentimes placed in a difficult position when working with children that are on the autism spectrum due to the number of fad treatments used among this population. It is important for behavior analysts to remain ethical in their conduct and in their methods of treatment. So there are some key points to take away from this presentation. One is that fad interventions can be dangerous. They can cause serious health problems and even death. They are costly and they can cause false hope among caregivers. Fad treatments usually lack reliability and validity and have limited or no scientific evidence to prove their effectiveness. Research has implied that caregivers are easily persuaded to try fad treatments because they are desperate to find something to help their child. Results of several studies discussed in this presentation indicate that even though parents were told that there was no evidence to support certain interventions, they continued to try these controversial treatments. Professionals, specifically behavior analysts, need to promote interventions that are evidence-based. Thank you so much for viewing my presentation.